Hello, my bookish darlings. Let's talk Brandon Sanderson. I bought Sanderson's debut novel, Tress, when it first was published in 2005. When you pick up a debut novel, it's kind of like you're discovering a new author because you're taking a risk on a debut, and then when that author takes off, it's like, I found that author. Obviously, Tress was followed by the Mistborn trilogy, and later, the Stormlight Archive. So, when Sanderson's Kickstarter for 4 independently published books was released, I jumped on board and purchased the 4 ebooks for $40. Who am I? I am the booktube goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. Anyway, I thought the price for the ebooks could have been a little lower, maybe $20, since it seemed to me, that there could have been a discount for the ebooks because it was aimed at those of us who are fans. So give your fans some love. Plus, we had to wait a year to get the books, and mostly we knew nothing about the books we were buying. We were buying them blind. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. What happened is that the Kickstarter broke all sorts of records and raised $40 million for these 4 books. But of course, that includes the premium bound books, signed editions, audiobooks, swag bags, and all that sort of thing, but still, $40 million. But anyway, I was just interested in the ebooks, and the first book has been released, Tress of the Emerald Sea. And it is different than any other Sanderson book I've read, so let's get into 10 reasons to read or not read Tress of the Emerald Sea.
Number 10.
The Cosmere. Yes, it's a Cosmere book, and I don't care. What's a Cosmere book? Cosmere is just Brandon Sanderson's cosmology that connects most of his books together, like Stormlight, Elantris, Mistborn, Warbreaker, and so on. You can kind of find some connections between them. Just like Stephen King, you can find these nebulous connections among his books. And this sort of thing really appeals to superfans who like making the connections among characters or gods and mythology among the books. Personally, I don't care. It's interesting, but not something I really track when I'm reading a Brandon Sanderson book. But maybe you do. Maybe this is one of the top reasons for you to read Tress of the Emerald Sea. But I will say this. You don't need to understand anything about the Cosmere to read this book. It is a standalone novel.
Number 9.
Humor. Humor is obviously totally subjective, so your mileage may vary, but this novel reaches for humor in the manner of Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman, Douglas Adams, and I know Sanderson really admires Terry Pratchett. So we found things like whole paragraphs that were parentheticals meant to amuse the readers that didn't really have anything to do with the story, little asides, things like that. Now, I enjoy humorous books at times, so I'm not unfamiliar with parodies or tongue-in-cheek or whatever. But I will say for me, Sanderson's humor landed maybe 50% of the time. Now, after reading the afterword, it is clear that Sanderson wrote this book as a gift for his wife that wasn't necessarily meant to be published. So, I'm not sure how much of this is inside jokes between them. And I just don't think Sanderson is a natural humor writer. It feels like he reaches a lot. With the exception of his middle grade evil librarian books, he usually doesn't write humor. So for me, I found the humor was just okay. And I didn't think it always worked, and sometimes it even took me out of the story. But again, this is totally subjective, and you may find it hilarious.
Number 8.
Anachronisms. Now, I'm actually not sure if anachronism is the correct word, but what I'm talking about is reading a traditional Tolkien type fantasy and finding a microwave oven in someone's kitchen. Is that an anachronism? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're there, like this video and subscribe to my channel. Now, Terry Brooks does this in the Chronicles of Shannara, but he did that where it was really subtle. I'm kind of on the fence about how I feel about it in this book. Sometimes I thought it was funny, but sometimes I was like, what?
Number 7.
The narrator. One interesting thing to me about this book was Sanderson playing around with POV. It's written in the first person, but it reads like the third person, and at times even jumps to second person. Let me explain. First of all, when I say second person, I really mean breaking the fourth wall where the narrator talks to you, the reader. And to me, it reads a lot like third person because the first person narrator is not the main character of the story. But you do eventually meet the narrator, who is actually a side character in the story. So it feels slightly experimental, while again, sometimes it brought me out of the story. Most of the time, the narrator worked for me. So overall, I enjoyed the voice of the novel.
Number 6.
Fairy tale. I found Tress of the Emerald Sea to have a very fairy tale type quality to it, and I mean the writing style. It reminded me a lot, at first anyway, of Neil Gaiman's Stardust. Now, when you first read it, you'll think it is a romance like The Princess Bride. In fact, in the afterword, Sanderson said one of his inspirations was imagining the story of The Princess Bride, only with the roles reversed. But even though this romantic relationship between Tress, the main character, and her prince frame the story, it is ultimately about Tress's journey to find herself.
Number 5.
Talking animals. Okay, just one talking animal. I just really enjoy a book that has a talking animal thrown in. And I won't spoil the book for you, but keep an eye out. This reinforces the fairy tale quality to the story. It's a humorous element that absolutely works for me, especially since the animal in question has such a wonderful personality. And yeah, enough said.
Number 4.
Villains. One thing that can make or break a fantasy novel are the villains, and there's a couple of really good villains in this novel. First of which is the Duke who runs the island that Tress lives on. He really is something awful. Then there is the pirate captain, a woman with some issues. She is cruel and terrible and has dark secrets. Then there is the sorceress, the ultimate epic villain of the novel, who mostly we see through the imagination of other characters and the mythology that has grown up around her. All the villains really round out the story, drive up the stakes, and really work for me.
Number 3.
Pirates. Yar, matey. Who doesn't love pirates? We get well acquainted with the pirate crew of the Crow's Song, from the assistant cannon master who can't aim, the cabin boy who's not really young, and most especially the quartermaster who is deaf and physically monstrous but has a heart of gold. the tone of the entire book is light-hearted, so the pirate ship has more of the feel of Captain Hook rather than Blackbeard. I'll be honest, I'm not even a huge fan of pirates, but I found myself loving the pirate crew.
Number 2.
Magic System. Okay, Brandon Sanderson is known for his magic systems. They are designed like he was designing a system for some detailed gaming system. Well thought out, unique, with limitations. Mistborn, I would say, has one of the truly great magic systems. Frankly, I think Sanderson has taken his design of magic systems in his novels to a whole new level. The way he has developed and incorporated such intricate magic system into his novels has inspired other authors to do the same. And Tress of the Emerald Sea is no different. In this world, the magic comes from the seas, which are incredibly unique. But I won't say why because I don't want to give spoilers and it's kind of fun to find out. But it does have something to do with the 12 moons that surround the world. And it may be the most dangerous magic system for humans to use that Sanderson has designed yet. And I went in wondering what new twists the magic systems would give us, and it gave us a lot, and I was not disappointed.
Number 1.
Tress. Yes, the number one reason to read this novel is because of the titular character, Tress. And she's named that way because of her hair, which is an unruly mane. She is a simple window washer on a small island from a poor family. She knows little about the wider world around her, and she decides to go on a quest that she is totally unprepared for in order to find her true love. Yes, Princess Bride and Stardust come to mind, but this made it for me a character-driven novel insofar that I really did like Tress a lot and was completely engaged with her quest and watching her character arc. She was always super optimistic, almost Pollyanna-ish, but her positivity, even in dire situations, usually served her well. And obviously having a main character you care about really can make or break a book, and for me, it made this book. Yes, Tress of the Emerald Sea gets my blessing. Now, this is not my favorite Sanderson novel, not by a far shot. I'm curious about how others may feel about it because it does not read like a typical adult Sanderson novel. It felt like Sanderson took a lot of huge swings that he doesn't usually take in his writing, and it did not always pay off. The humor didn't always work for me, and the experimental narration sometimes took me out of the story. That said, overall, I enjoyed this novel, and if you've read it, I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.